I don't remember a Chinese phone that made such a great impression on me, but the Vernee Thor definitely did. Hey guys, Eugene here, and this is the Vernee Thor. Vernee as a company is brand new, and this is their very first phone released with an impressive 22,000 pre-orders, so there really is a ton of interest in this phone. It costs $120 at most places for standard price, but at this point you can actually get this phone for $50 if you make a review for it, and Vernee approves it. So I haven't actually talked about this phone yet, but it has an MTK Octacore processor, 3GB RAM, and the latest Android 6.0 OS, and a Gorilla Glass 3 2.5D screen. And considering you're paying $120 or even $100 for this phone, it's an amazing deal. But in other phones, great specs have been let down by poor software and unfinished things. So let's see if Vernee Thor falls into the same trap. Vernee has really made such a compelling phone to hold. It's been a really long time since I found a phone that I just pick up because it feels so nice in the hand. It's actually been quite a while since I reviewed a non-metal phone or glass and case phone, and this phone here is matte plastic, but I actually like this more than most glass phones and even some metal phones. The plastic gives you one of the best grips on the phone. It cannot slip out of your hand, but one downside is that it occasionally gets stuck in your pocket as you try to take it out. So this phone is very compact for a 5.5-inch phone, about the same size as the Galaxy S7 and roughly the same size as my Xiaomi Redmi 3, but a lot thinner. It actually looks way smaller than it is because of the curves on this phone. Bezels around the phone aren't that big, but they are not bezel-less either. Overall, the size of the phone is perfect for small-handed users like me. Oh, and did I mention the 2.5D glass? It just makes this phone look so good. The buttons are on the right, and opening up the back cover you can find the dual SIMs microSD and the non-removable battery. The back of the phone looks a little plainer. You have the textured plastic, the fingerprint sensor, and logo and camera. Okay, so here's my first complaint about this phone, the quality control. The backplate I got does not line up with the fingerprint sensor, so you can see that the hole was punched out at the wrong spot, so it does not line up properly. Other than that, this phone is solid. This phone is durable, it is light, it's compact, it looks great, it feels great. It has everything going for it, except for the misaligned backplate on my unit. But I've watched a ton of other videos and other Vernee Thors don't have this right now, so it probably is just me. I'm going to throw 3 spec categories at you here. First, this phone's 5-inch screen is 720p with a 95% color gamut. Anyway, I would say this display looks great, but it's definitely not the absolute best. That honor, in my opinion, still go to the Galaxy S7 and the Nexus 6P. Vernee has compared the Thor screen to the S6 and said that they were comparable. Well, in my opinion, the S6 screen is still noticeably better. But I'm not dismissing this phone's display at all. It's still great. Number 2 is an Oncell display with 500 nits of brightness. An Oncell display means fully laminated, which means very little reflections, and max brightness is really decent. It's quite easy to use in full sunlight. And number 3, it has Gorilla Glass 3 with anti-fingerprint technology, so that fingerprints do not show up. And the screen does feel liquid to the touch. The touch sensitivity is also top-notch as well. Do I have any complaints about the display? Well, no. But those who just must have 1080p resolutions will definitely not like the fact that the Vernee Thor screen is only 720p. There is one speaker in the back of the device, and its loudness is pretty decent, but turning on the volume booster and it becomes painfully loud, and there's surprisingly little distortion at max level. Audio quality though is a mixed bag. Mids and highs are surprisingly clear and pretty good in terms of audio quality, but bass is another story. It feels like bass is non-existent. In this music video there's a bass guitar, which means, well, bass. And when that guy starts playing, there's supposed to be bass, but there's actually nothing. So it's like the speaker figured the note was too low and didn't even try. Have a listen for yourself. So Vernee has decided to put a 2800 mAh battery for a 5-inch display, which is definitely really decent, but it's not a big battery phone. I'm expecting slightly above battery results here. Let's see what we get. I did 2 tests. First I reloaded webpage every 10 seconds, and the phone died after about 7 hours and 25 minutes. Then I looped the video until it died, and it lasted for about 8 hours and 14 minutes. Those are great battery results, considering the battery is only 2800 mAh. Here's a more real-life battery test. I unplugged at about 6 AM, I listened to podcasts for about 2 hours, did some news and Reddit, played about 2 hours of games, and I had about 10% left at 10 PM. Before I give my battery verdict, I want to reiterate that I am an ultra-heavy user. It's not all the time, but sometimes. For example, I don't expect this phone to hold up under my ultra-heavy usage, which I do sometimes, as it isn't a big battery phone. So this usage consists of watching YouTube videos for about 7 hours, then I play about 3 hours of Hearthstone, and then I'll have about like 10% left. That's abnormal usage on my Xiaomi Redmi 3, and I don't expect this phone, which doesn't have a big battery, to hold up under that sort of usage. That being said, light users won't have a problem at all, medium users also will not have a problem, and heavy users can make it to the end of the day, no problem most of the time. We have Android 6.0 installed here, and it's pretty great. Well, actually, it's super great. We have completely stock Android, and Vernee has done a ton to optimize it and make sure it feels snappy. Here's the one weird part though, scrolling is silky smooth, but the flick sensitivity is too high, so when I just want to scroll a little, sometimes it'll scroll super fast instead. And I believe that's a problem with the software and not the hardware, so hopefully a future update will fix that. Vernee has been talking a lot that they use the same fingerprint chip as the Galaxy S7, so they boast some impressive unlock times. And surprisingly, even with my misaligned back cover, it unlocked incredibly fast, which is definitely very impressive. However, it's very hard to get my finger in the right spot because of the misaligned backplate, so I couldn't test accuracy very well here. Performance is really good. Launching apps is fast, but what really surprised me was the multitasking. With 3 gigs of RAM, you can leave way more apps open and instant launch them than when you touch them. Gaming wise, it's also really good. There's only a 720p screen to push, so it's not too intense. Intense games like Need for Speed and less intense games like Clash Royale ran pretty well. I ran Antutu as well and got a score of about 37,000, which is not as high as what Vernee got. I think they got about 38,900, but that's still really decent at 37,000. You get quad-band GSM and LTE, but only dual-band 3G, so make sure it works on your carrier before you buy it. You can go to www.willmyphonework.net to test it out. I ran speed tests and got some real good speeds on 4G. Something weird though, the 4G icon will show that you have terrible reception even though it's really strong, and you can get amazing speeds out of it, so that's just something that's kind of weird. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi also both work well, but Bluetooth range is a little bit less than my Redmi 3 when paired with my Bluetooth exercise earbuds. GPS quality is quite decent. Usually this MTK chip has pretty bad GPS reception, but the GPS here gets a lock pretty fast. The camera here is 13 megapixels and it is pretty finicky. Detail is not the issue here. The detail on each picture is actually really good. The issue is the firmware. When you focus on the right object, for example my dog's black fur, you get some pretty nice deep saturated colors. When you focus on the grass, everything becomes light and almost washed out. Here's an example. It's kind of weird, huh? If you want to just turn on the camera and snap a quick pic, it does work as long as you point it directly at the object you're taking, so the colors are okay for the background. One thing I was really impressed with was the, well, quote-unquote high-speed photography. This is my dog running at probably 20 kilometers per hour, and I'm running backwards at probably less than half that. In no preparation, I just whipped out my phone and snapped a photo, and it turned out pretty decent. The video quality is pretty decent as well. The front camera is a little worse quality than other normal front-facing cameras, so in conclusion, just keep in mind that the weird focusing issues when taking pics, otherwise quality is great. So at just $120, you get a great looking phone with the latest Android 6.0 OS, completely stocked with some very light and thoughtful touches to the software. Multitasking is excellent and you get very decent performance and very decent battery life. What about the not so good parts? So the biggest thing for me at least was the backplate that didn't match the fingerprint sensor, making the fingerprint reader almost unusable. I think that's a pretty rare problem as other videos I've watched do not have this issue. The second biggest thing is the lack of bass in the speakers. They are non-existent. And finally, the camera firmware is kind of weird. You can take good photos, but you have to focus on the right thing. Overall, I'm very satisfied with this phone. Huge props to Vernee for creating such a compelling phone on their first try, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Be sure to check out any of my other videos as well.